Hey folks, welcome back. As you can see today, I'm going to be doing a very early review, experiential discussion and reveal of this upcoming Kickstarter, which is the European Goddesses and Spirits Oracle by 𝗂𝗗𝗂. 𝗂𝗗𝗂 actually gifted me this deck. I, of course, said that whilst a review wasn't expected of me, I was happy to share my experience with this. I have been following 𝗂𝗗𝗂 for a really long time, loved her artwork, just loved her and what she puts out into the world. And this was a deck that had already caught my interest as one that I have been following since, I believe, 2020 is when the creation went into place. So yeah, it's been a long time in the making, and it's coming to Kickstarter on the 1st of May, so very, very soon. You may have actually seen it already. This deck has been discussed by some amazing creators on YouTube already. I'd already unboxed this on Instagram, but one of the things that I wanted to do, having seen the videos and really felt like there isn't much I can add to the conversation based on what these creators have already said, I wanted to take some time to put it into practice and experience it and tell you how I've been using it and how I've been getting on with it, which I've had it around 4 weeks at a push. So bear that in mind. I've definitely had it in practice for 3 weeks, of which I've worked with a goddess or spirit a week. After I've shown you the deck and talked a little bit about it, I will just show you a couple of the decks I've been using to expand upon that practice as well. But I think before we dive in, the only other bit of information I would add is that I haven't really worked with goddess and spirit decks of this kind before, and one of the reasons is they often don't feel very applicable, I suppose, to my practice in their entirety. Now, this deck in particular has 40 deities, like I said, goddesses and spirits, and it's from Celtic, Germanic, Greek, Norse and Slavic cultures linked to specific regions of Europe. And so as a European, this deck and a fair amount of the spirits and deities included make sense to the land that I live, where I was born, some of the cultural syncretism that has occurred here over time, and just my practice overall. So it's very specific, and whilst not all of these are ones I would necessarily work with in such an intimate way, and they would be more of a divinatory message, there is a lot more opportunity and potential for me to do that with this particular deck. And so it's why I was really kind of keen and invested in it. Also, really quickly before we get into the cards, I just want to read what 𝗂𝗗𝗂 said as well about her choice to focus solely on European goddesses and spirits. And that is, as a woman of European descent, I feel like I cannot connect to all of them on a deep enough level to represent them in a way that would do them justice. For this reason, I decided to limit this deck to European goddesses. This is the tuck box, by the by, and I'm just showing it to you because it's completely empty. The deck hasn't gone back in it since, not because I don't like the tuck box, it actually feels great, but because I've had the deck out on my altar to the right. So if you want to see the gorgeousness that was the unboxing, I think a few of our YouTubers actually showed the whole entire package, which was like a beautiful purple explosion. I will just show you what came in it really quickly. This is actually a lovely little note from 𝗂𝗗𝗂 as well, so I'm not going to turn it over. And then it came with this absolutely stunning snake sticker, which just feels wildly timely because we're working with snake on my Patreon at the moment for this month's Animal Gnosis. And then here is just a little breakdown of the Kickstarter. It's coming on the 1st of May, and the Kickstarter is already up, so you can follow the page. I'm going to put the link in the bio. As I say, this is a prototype. It's not the finished product, although the prototype was just as eco-friendly as the aim for the Kickstarter, which I truly, truly appreciate. But in the tuck box, you would get the little guidebook and then the cards. And I believe that this is the sizing and stuff that she would be going for. But just to say, we're not going to be talking about the cardstock so much as we are, like I said, my experience and what you can expect from the deck and the books. So let's get into it. This is who I've been working with for the past week, and interestingly enough, the three goddesses and spirits that I pulled during my time working with one a week throughout the time of having this have been Norse, which people will know predominantly that is the mythos and pantheon that I work with. So that's been really interesting that the deck has pretty much just been giving me Norse individuals. I'm sure I'm going to come across others, and as I say, some are still sort of relevant to my practice, some I'm just interested in anyway, others I know about. I've often said how much sort of Greek pantheon and myth and stuff is discussed, at least when I was younger, in the schools over here. You'll see that there aren't keywords on the cards. There are just the titles, and honestly, I think it's one of those things. To keyword or not to keyword is the ultimate question for a lot of oracle creators, especially when they're creating decks like this, where you've got a spirit representation or perhaps an animal representation, a plant representation, something that people will have different connections and practice and personal gnosis with. So I'm comfortable and happy with Johanna's reasoning for not putting keywords on these decks, to not really want to box people in, because I've been using the guidebook with this anyway. I have been fortunate that I've been familiar with some that have come through already, but I really wanted to put the guidebook sort of through its paces, as it were, and see what it added to my experience. It's not a deck where I feel like I don't want to be tied to the guidebook, and also the information's very, very easily digestible. It feels very accessible as a read, and I think after a while, if you're looking to work with them in a way where perhaps they're actually a part of your practice as opposed to just divination readings, I think that information would get retained over time anyway. But that's my humble opinion. You're never going to please everyone. There are keywords in the actual books themselves, so they are highlighted. And I suppose there's a lot of modders out there, so perhaps they will mod their decks if this beauty comes into creation, which I very much hope it does. But my understanding is that if the Kickstarter wasn't fully funded, this wouldn't be. So I feel eternally grateful to have a copy, but also really, really keen to get this out into the world. I have seen a lot of excitement for it, so hopefully we will see it come to fruition by the end of May. I think Kickstarters are 30 days, right? I will say I love the variation of colour in Johanna's artwork. Like I said, I already really enjoyed it anyway, but I think that for me, the colour tones and some of the inclusions really add to the overall energetic experience of working with these. There's something soft about certain cards and not about others. Some feel really uplifting, some feel like they're really challenging. I haven't said much about the artwork because it's either your kind of thing or it's not. Also, for me, it's the crux of working with a deck. It just so happens that I have really enjoyed the artwork on top of that. That is the card. So they are our 40 deities and goddesses. And if you're wondering, there's also a discussion and clarification between who was and wasn't considered a goddess, which is very important information and is very much brushed over quite a lot in older materials, whether that's a deck creation or a book or you name it. I couldn't have told you all of them. It wasn't something that I had pre-existing knowledge of out of the ones that I'm familiar with. So I really appreciate that sort of continued theme of respect that runs throughout and goes into the book with the historical records and scholarly works and other reliable resources that Johanna has utilised, of course with some of her own personal gnosis, and then the continuous encouragement to create our own in connection with each of these. This is the guidebook that comes in the tuck box, and This is the one that I've been calling the mini book. It's not mini, there is still a plethora of information in this. So I'm just going to take you through really quickly. This is one of the things that I haven't worked with yet, but there is an archetypal breakdown within the deck, and it is something that I look forward to exploring and seeing what I think of this. But like I said, I had a set amount of time before I really wanted to bring this video to you. So I've just gone for whoever's come out and then working with them from there. Now, this book doesn't have any of the images in it, not that we need them. It is beautifully done in alphabetical order, so we are saved the aggravation that often happens with any of the guidebooks. I was just checking, there isn't a contents page on this one, so even more useful. So as you can see, we've got the name of the deity or spirit, the main keyword, which then the following divination message, which is predominantly what it is, will encapsulate, I suppose, a little bit of the individual and then more some information of why this keyword's been chosen. So here you can see some of the parts. Changes in your life generally appear unexpected. A breakup, a death, or a loss of employment, whatever hook you may have attached your identity to, is suddenly snatched away and you are plunged into the dark cauldron of 𝗪𝗏𝗀 to be remade again. A lot of information that backs up that keyword, transformation. But there are also journaling prompts, which I always appreciate. And that's how this guidebook continues until it finishes up. It's a lovely offering, and honestly, if you're looking predominantly to use this deck for divination, this is likely going to be enough for you. Here you've got the crux. You definitely have some information enough to start off your work with this deck. And also, one of the things that I would always say is if you're actually looking to work with these spirits and deities in a meaningful way, then you're going to end up looking into resource material beyond what's offered in any one book offering. At least that's the way that I see it. That is definitely the way that I would approach it. It's very much each to your own. I definitely can see people using this just as a divination tool. Like I say, some of these I wouldn't necessarily be looking to creating a long time practice, deep and meaningful relationship with. I do love to do my research anyway, but certainly some of them will be ones that I would like to work with in a greater way and build that relationship with. So I'm just likely to be someone who's going to enjoy the larger companion book, be someone who looks up other resources, be someone who utilises the bibliography that's in the bigger book as well. So I just wanted to give you a little look at the smaller one before we then move on. And here we have the other star of the show, in my opinion. Obviously, I love the artwork, but the information in this has been really helpful in my experience of working with the deck thus far. And so this is the large companion book that I was talking about, and will be an additional add-on to the Kickstarter if it's something that you're interested in. Look at that. Let's just take a moment. I know my overhead lighting's making everything shiny and ick, but this is what we're dealing with. So here we've got a contents breakdown, which of course you're going to need in a larger guidebook like this. We've got the preface, introduction, the divination approach, the devotional approach, which is really where you're getting into the extras of this, and then the card spreads. Again, all the goddesses and spirits are still in alphabetical order, but we have the page numbers and the bibliography, which is a standout addition as far as I'm concerned. And also one of the places I would encourage people to always go when you're looking firstly to where the research came from anything you're reading, and you can sort of work out what you think of the sources, or you also have the option to go and explore those sources too and really expand upon that. So it's a great way to find more information. What you will notice here is there's a repeat of information from the smaller guidebook, and that's another reason that I haven't really had to access that, because everything that's in the smaller one is in here, but it's bigger and it has all of the extra stuff. I don't want to give away all of Johanna's card spreads and stuff like that, but we get into the card spread section and you work your way up from 1 to 2, and then there's some significantly larger spreads as well. So there's a bit of something for everyone. Predominantly, the way that I understand this is it's looking to pulling multiple goddesses and spirits from the deck. That's one way to use it. Another way, I would perhaps consider an individual card and seeing who we get, and then utilising the spread with like a tarot or an oracle deck to expand upon that one particular deity. Now, I appreciate that's not necessarily what these were created for intentionally, but I definitely feel like that's another workable way of utilising them. And in terms of doing like a giant spread, I would be more inclined to work with it that way, so I can focus on one of the individuals or two of them, and then, yeah, just have that extra information. So that's just a aside if you're interested. Just before we get into one of the cards, to show you the beautiful colour gloss that is this particular book. I'll be honest, a lot of the time when tarot deck guidebooks do this and they do a massive reproduction of the imagery, I'm really not bothered. And the reason being is because they put all of this work into making the book look a certain way, and then it totally lacks any depth or useful information for me. This is not the case in my experience. As I say, I have been solely relying on this as a resource for the time being before expanding upon it and taking in all of the information. So 𝗏 was one of the individuals who came out for me. And I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I did want to show it all to you. Now, when Johanna breaks down what's in the extra larger companion book, it's the bibliography texts, which is this part, the correspondences and connection ideas, devotion approaches, and then obviously the card spreads and the bibliography. So this piece that you're seeing here, which says divination, this is the replication of what's in the smaller guidebook. So the accompanying one that comes with it. So you still have all of that information, but you get all of this extra, and I absolutely adore it. Here we've got the themes and they break down into several. So let's just check the small one and see what 𝗏 says. Here we've got 𝗏 and stillness. So that's the predominant keyword in the small guidebook, which of course you do get up here. But here it breaks out into more themes. So death, rebirth, earth, duality, transformation, introspection. For me, this is where it really comes into its own. It's the historic, it's the mythical information, it's the bits that are really enhancing my ability to learn more about them, connect more, have an idea of like initial offerings, or how I might create like a ritual environment to connect. And I just think that these, along with the journaling expansions and prompts, it encourages practice in a greater way. It's like beyond the divination, beyond the oracle. And like I say, if you want it as an oracle, you're sorted, and you know, this may not be of interest to you, but as a reflection of practice and what I wanted to do with it, I have just appreciated it so much. And then to give you an idea of the correspondences, we've got here ice, the colours black and white, and death positivity, which I freaking love. When I pulled 𝗏, I was literally writing about death work, and actually a concept from, we'll call it Buddhist psychology / psychotherapy methods. It was like an expansion of some training I was doing. I'm not going to bore you with it, but anyway, so death positivity. Although we know that all of us die, most of the Western world lives in death denial. Openly talking about death and contemplating our mortality can help to alleviate a lot of fear and anxiety. This idea lives at the core of the modern death positivity movement. Cultivating a death positive mindset can be a part of a devotional practice to 𝗏. You can start by looking up the work of the Order of the Good Death online and see where your path takes you from there. Just feel like that these are a really great starting point, and if you already have a connection with 𝗏, you may already have loads more. And I think that this is that nice sweet spot where there's not too much information. I'm not going to lie, I could have had pages of this and I would be fine, but that's just my style of, I will take as much as I can get if I think that it's useful and resourceful information, which this is. There comes a certain point for a lot of people where it's too much information, and also there's that fine line between reading about something and just reading and reading and reading and actually putting it into practice, actually creating offerings, actually being in ritual, actually, you know, seeking connection. And so these devotion ideas are just a really beautiful, respectful, and like I said, well-researched way to approach these. In my humble opinion, as I say, I'm only familiar with like a fair handful of these, but the familiarity wanes between how much as well, you know. So I have found this really helpful, and this is what I've been doing. I've been pulling the card, I've been sitting with the imagery. This isn't one I've pulled, but I keep stopping on her today actually. Sitting with the imagery and just seeing what I notice. So of course, animals straight away, bear, rabbit, what they mean to me, strength, fertility, resourcefulness. We've got fungi here, which, I mean, I could get into realms of that actually. And then anything that I don't recognise, I know is going to be discussed in here anyway. So I'm kind of covered there because I'm not as much of a hotshot when it comes to the plants and identifying them. And then I get into this and I do a bit of light sort of journaling or initial thoughts. And then what I've been doing is picking one correspondence that makes sense to me, because some of them aren't necessarily accessible to me in the moment. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'd go straight for bear here. As the goddess who gave the bear its claws. And one of the things that I will add as well is, instead of butchering it, I will look up the pronunciation and then try and learn it that way. So I'm not going to say this, but I did think I would give you my little tidbit on how to go around that. Has a strong connection to this animal. To honour her, you can create or gather objects that remind you of bears for your altar space. Educate yourself about the bear as an animal, and if possible, research options to help living bears local to you. Oh, I knew there was a reason I landed on this. That makes my heart so fucking happy. I don't want to take away from what we're doing here, but one of the things with my animal gnosis work is not just seeing animals as archetypes or spirits or other than these things that are just here to be a symbol to us and benefit us, but really actually give back. I have been harping on about it for years. Engage with wildlife, see it for what it is, you know, don't fetishize it, don't demonize it. And I just love that this was a facet of like really getting into practice and connection. I'm so glad that I landed on that because, of course, I haven't read the whole book, given that I haven't worked with the whole deck yet. Here at the back, we have the most gorgeous reproduction of the cards as well. Would these not make the cutest stickers? Just thinking out loud. And then the bibliography. A good bibliography cannot be beaten. Some books that I actually own myself as well, so feeling good to see those for sure. We've even got some online resources as well. So Johanna has really made sure that she has not only done the research, but speaking to where she has researched as well, because so often people will utilise, especially online resources, and then just not make mention of it at all. And yeah, we're not here for that. So I will quickly now show you the other two decks that I have been using to enhance upon some of the work that I've been doing throughout the week with each of these. Card divination and communication is such a big facet of my personal practice. It makes sense to me. That is how I communicate with spirit anyway. And so bringing in a tarot or an oracle deck to expand upon the conversation is just a natural go-to for me in particular. Of course, I was going to pull Freya out because of course that is predominantly who I devote myself to, out of this selection anyway, also Odin. They are actually both at either side of my altar as we speak. And then the decks that I've been using are both by the same creator actually. They are decks that I use for spirit communication and ritual and other types of readings that don't always fall in the more sort of day-to-day or developmental, psychological, emotional, reflective kind of readings that I do. I can do those readings with these decks, but these decks are so much more than that. So this is the, how funny, scissors. This is the Memento Mori Oracle, and this is by Black and the Moon, 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗀𝗀. The reason that I love to use this particular deck, and I'm not sure why I shuffled, so the rest are just going to be ones that I've pulled out now, is because it speaks in symbols, and I think that that makes the most sense to me when I'm talking with certain spirits in particular, and also it can be a really great way for me in terms of adding something to an offering or a ritual that I'm doing to kind of build that connection. Like I say, we've already got the correspondences from the book itself, and then all of the additional stuff that you might find out over time working with and exploring the particular spirit or goddess. But I really like this deck for it. I will use Oracle and Oracle because you've seen the Memento Mori, but to me that's a very different kind of Oracle deck. To use something too similar to this just wouldn't make sense to me. So it's really the only Oracle that I've gone for at this time. I really wanted to try a tarot with it as well to kind of expand upon discussion with the cards. Or say that I was working with the concept of surrender, which isn't actually Freya's keyword, but has been what I've been working on this week. I might want to expand upon, okay, how is that specifically showing up for me? Because it's perhaps not showing up everywhere, which it wasn't. And then tarot's a bit more of my language in that sense, especially if it's something that perhaps I've got some resistance around, or I need some more clarification, or I need some more challenging before I actually get to the work. And so the Antique Anatomy Tarot has worked really well for me. And the reason being, sorry, that's annoying me. So we're just gonna do that. The reason being is this is quite a spacious deck, and it boils down a lot to key symbolism and colour, which then allows me to obviously use all of the lovely numerology elements, intuition and stuff that I get from it, and work out how, like I say, it's expanding upon the key theme or the key connection. So that's more when I'm working with them in a, I suppose, in the divinatory capacity. I'm not saying I wouldn't use a tarot to communicate with them, but I'd more likely use the Memento Mori to ask, you know, what kind of focal points, what kind of offerings might you want. I feel like spirits speak really well in symbols in particular. So yeah, they are the two additional decks that I have used in tandem with this beauty. And there you have it. That is my, like I said, experiential early review. Usually I don't review things or dare to call it a review until I've spent a long time with it, but as I say, it's been a very dedicated portion of my practice this month, and I hope that that's been somewhat interesting to you, as well as just being able to see the deck. If you want to support it, if you want to check it out, all the information will be in the bio below. Let me know what you think. I would genuinely love to hear, and I will be back soon with some more video content, whatever that may be. Bye.